everyone. Hi. Oh my God.
Hi.
Thank you all so much for being here. This is Storytelling as Embodied Empathy. I am Nicole Orabona.
I'm Nathan Leigh, and we are cirqueSaw.
Yeah, we're very grateful you're here. There are stickers. If you want one, you can take one or not. But they're sticky, not just regular. Anyway, we make.
What's a regular sticker?
Well, no, not a business card.
Oh.
They're not like you might think it's just a card.
Understood. Yeah.
But we make cooperative experiences at the intersection of live games and performances. And here are some shows we've made.
POV, you are an AI achieving consciousness. This was our first piece of remote theater. POV is a immersive and interactive piece that explores the intersection of art, philosophy, and technology, and invites the audience to go beyond discussions about the role of AI in modern life to become an artificial intelligence themselves. The piece came together really quickly over about 3 months and then blew up in a way that we did not at all expect. And it was the beginning of cirqueSaw's tech stack. It used Zoom for streaming, and we discovered over that process that that was less than ideal. So after making POV, we took a year off to build a platform that we call the cirqueSaw OS, which is a virtual browser-based distributed operating system that runs a programming language that I created called Familect. That all of our work is based in now. I won't go too in-depth into that, but if you want to hang out with us afterwards and talk about the syntaxes of 60s programming languages, I would love literally nothing more than that.
Our next project was Void Main. It was the first to utilize the cirqueSaw OS. I played an astronaut orbiting Saturn on a solo mission, with the audience playing as students on a routine call home that takes a bit of a turn and puts the life of the astronaut in their hands. We actually built a spaceship in our basement for this one. It still exists down there. And it has about 128 different ways that the story can unfold.
If you were here at NarraScope last year, you may know our most successful project, Lab Rats, where audience play as lab rats in an incomprehensible experiment who have to work together to take control of their lives and achieve whatever they determine freedom to be. This show is the basis for our talk today, so we'll dive into it in a lot more detail later, but we're going chronologically, so that's Lab Rats.
Our latest project, you have already won. It's currently in its workshop stage of development. It's a satire where audiences play as billionaires in private bunkers after a climate catastrophe. It's this very absurdist take on climate change that we sort of describe as a collective existential shout into the void. Also written in Familect and presented in the cirqueSaw OS.
And this was our first submission to IFComp last year. It's a choice-based homage to 70s science fiction featuring dozens of unique story paths and an interactive score that constructs itself as you play. It was written in our story engine platform that is the basis for a couple other things that we're working on in the future. And we will be getting it ready for a wider release in the fall.
And then we have The Shadow of Our Unstable, which is sort of just our take on the classic murder mystery. It's a very irreverent, interactive homage to The X-Files, Lovecraft, and New England townies. We mostly run this one for corporate team building. So if you work for a corporation that wants to do some fun murder mystery team building, and we usually we pop it up once a year for spooky season.
We also have some accolades. We were the NarraScope 2025 featured showcase. We won the 2026 Indiecade Live Action Award. That was cool. We spoke at the GDC Experimental Games Showcase this year, which was cool. We presented at the Playable Theater Symposium, which was cool. And
we met some people in this room.
And really nice. And we were at the Amaze Festival in Berlin last month and have been recognized by No Proscenium. So now that you know that we're not just 3 raccoons in a trench coat, but 3 credentialed raccoons in a trench coat, we'll get onto the actual story.
All right. So first things first, What do we mean by empathy? Empathy is not taking on someone else's feelings and making them about you, but it is trying to view someone else's experience from their perspective and imagining how that might feel.
This is one of those distinctions that seems simultaneously so obvious it doesn't need to be said, and is also sort of counterintuitive. And this is going to be a theme. When we talk about empathy, we don't mean feeling someone else's emotions in a literal sense, as in, you're sad and I'm sad now. We mean putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Like that little cat in a boot. And as a storyteller, this can be really hard, right? Because the thing that drives any of us to tell a story in the first place is that you want to take an experience that you had and share it with others. And so for most artists, the goal is to make another person feel something. But storytelling is still a form of communication, which means that it's not just about expressing an intent, it's about expressing it in a way that can be understood by another person. Even if I'm the one with the microphone, we're still having a two-way conversation.
So if your goal is to have what you want to be expressed be understood, and it should be, why are you doing this if it isn't? You can go into the woods and scream at the top of your lungs with a lot less effort. Then you have to consider how what you want to express will be received. So when you tell a story, ideally what you're doing is you're taking a piece of yourself and you're framing it and you're giving it to somebody else. And then they internalize it and it resonates with them. It becomes part of their framing of the world. Earlier, an hour ago during Allie's talk, I was talking to Josh Mandel, and he quoted a line that someone wrote in a project that he worked on 35 years ago that, unbeknownst to me, I quote all the time. Those things that you create as a storyteller, they become part of someone else's consciousness, and they become integrated into their experience of the world. A good story fundamentally changes both the listener and the storyteller. The stories we love most are the ones that made us feel like some aspect of our experience of the world as listener is understood by somebody else. And, we overuse the term being seen sometimes, but what it means is that it's a sense that you feel less alone, right? When you feel seen, you feel connected to, you feel like somebody understands your experience of the world. They see the world from your perspective. Your readers want to be seen by you. I want to be seen by my favorite authors. The only way that happens is if you make space for them in your storytelling. And if you do it, it expands the life cycle of your story from the immediacy of a trend cycle to potentially centuries. So this winter, I finally got around to reading Don Quixote. And spoiler alert for a 500-year-old book, but the book, often cited as the greatest novel ever written, is pretty great. But the biggest thing I took away from it, other than, the windmills, which are fun, and the heartbreaking ending, is that I really felt like Miguel de Cervantes saw the world in the same way that I did. I felt connected to Cervantes. I felt much more than I felt connected to Don Quixote or Sancho. I felt like if we weren't separated by centuries and continents and language and huge amounts of cultural context and the general laws of space and time and physics and stuff, Miguel and I would have been friends. I loved that story because I felt a connection to another human being. Empathy bleeds out of those pages. Cervantes loves Don Quixote, and he loves his readers. He hates his critics, and he devotes a shocking amount of time to addressing them directly, which social media didn't exist at the time, so what else was he supposed to do? But storytelling at its best is about connection, and you cannot connect without practicing empathy. So, shall we roleplay?
I'm a union actor. Is that okay? Are you gonna? We watched Francisco's talk earlier, so are you gonna?
Is Francesco in the room? No, then
No.
we're good.
Okay. You're just going to exploit me.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay,
exploiting you.
Great. Let's do it then.
But it's consensual.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Well, my mom's been really sick lately, so I'm kind of having a hard
Oh
time.
yeah, my mom's having this health thing too, and it's like really, really hard on me.
This
and
is not empathy. This is making the conversation about you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Try again.
Okay, yep.
Okay. Hey, how's it going?
Well, my mom's been really sick lately, so I'm kind of having a hard
Oh,
time.
that is really sad. Like I am just so sad now.
This is also not empathy.
Shit.
Or the online version.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, my mom's been really sick lately, so I'm kind of having a hard time.
Yikes! So you think your mom being sick is more important than all the other sick moms in the world? Wow.
I don't even know what the hell this is.
Okay, let's try again.
Okay, great.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, my mom's been really sick lately, so I'm kind of having a hard time.
Oh man, that sucks. And I've noticed you haven't really been around as much. Is that why?
Ding, ding, ding. Empathy.
Yay, we
Yay.
did it. So, normally you don't have to think about all that, right? Because you just do it. But the work comes when you start to consider scale. If I am talking to you one-on-one out in the courtyard, I'm watching your visual cues, I'm extrapolating information about our shared cultural context, I'm listening to you without even thinking about it, I'm modulating how I'm talking to you in response to how you're talking to me. And this is all just happening automatically. Sometimes you might think about it, but you're doing it even if you're not thinking about it.
But when it's one person talking to a lot of people, like we are right now, or especially when it's online, suddenly all the visual cues are gone. It's not possible for me to take in all of your faces at once. So I can read the room in a general sense. I can look up from our notes and notice that people are looking at their phones or they're talking to each other. And I might change how I'm talking, but it's just one or two people. I might miss it entirely. Cultural context can sometimes be inferred from the space we're communicating in, like the choice, if we're in a Discord about a specific topic of interest, the choice to be there together at all implies some things about our shared value, our shared intent. There might be codes of conduct that we are agreeing to follow by being in that space. But even when there's a layer of anonymity that means you can never really know someone else's intent. And the asynchronous nature of online communication means that even if we have the best of intentions and we intend to be attentive to each other, we can still talk over each other and get out of sync.
So that means that if you're telling stories over any kind of digital medium, these are the limitations you have to navigate. And suddenly using empathy as a tool is both harder than telling stories live and in person, and also so much more important.
Which brings us to Lab Rats. If you caught our talk at GDC or you've played it before, you probably heard this. So if you need to go get some water or check your phones or whatever. For the rest of you, here's the spiel. Lab Rats is a 75-minute performance for 20 people that straddles the line between theater and game. The audience plays as rats in a lab outfitted with these kind of janky neural transmitters that don't really work right. A researcher, performed by a live actor, Nicole, torments them by subjecting them to a capricious experiment. We gently provoke the audience throughout it so that the rats, who only ever know each other by number and communicate only by text, come to see themselves as aligned against a shared oppressor. Later, the rats are set free from their cage and they explore the lab, which is full of mysteries and puzzles and stories and mini games. And then finally, the researcher ups the ante and the rats have to decide how to respond together.
And the narrative is co-created live by us and the audience together. The custom programming language allows us to improvise new interactive elements in response to the audience choices. And we work in a variety of mediums and styles in order to maintain this sense of disorientation, similar to how a rat might feel in the process of acquiring new senses. And every show, something happens that we could never have anticipated, but we shape in order to make sense in the context. We call this curated chaos. if you haven't seen the show and want to play it or know more about it, we do have a couple performances coming up. So we've got a business cards, if you want to talk about it later, but end shameless self-promotion now.
Yeah. So Lab Rats began because I wanted to share things about the experience of being a disabled person in America. There are a lot of ideas at work in Lab Rats, and there's a long essay hidden in it. But the most important is this question of individual need versus collective responsibility. I have a serious lung condition. My lungs are too big for my body, so I can talk very loudly, but it's very painful for me to do so. But I wanted to express something about what it feels to have a body that doesn't function the way you expect it. And what it feels like to have to rely on other people for your survival without making a collapsed lung simulator. Sometimes we describe Lab Rats as an empathy machine or an empathy simulator. It's core to the experience that you be frustrated. We tell people there's no wrong way to play, but if you experience Lab Rats without any frustration, you played it wrong. The intended experience is one in which you are frustrated by trying to figure out something alone, and it becomes easier when you trust someone else to help. The animating goal was to communicate that part of my lived experience to other people.
Unfortunately, those first few playtests, we did not communicate that very well. In fact, during the first round of playtests for Lab Rats, we got some of the harshest feedback we have ever received. A friend of ours who makes escape rooms actually spent 20 minutes lecturing us on why this was a terrible escape room. Spoiler alert, it's actually not an escape room at all. We actually just failed to communicate to him what the piece actually was.
What we discovered was that if your goal is to communicate the experience of being alienated, you have to expect people to feel alienated by that. This is another one of those things that feels obvious when you say it out loud, but we learned it the hard way.
We wanted to impose limitations on how people interact with the world of Lab Rats, but that meant that people had a hard time at first discerning between something that was broken, as in it was intentionally not user-friendly, when something was broken, as in Nathan just wrote some bad code, or when something was broken, as in the idea is just not being received as intended.
One of the core forms of alienation in this experience is with the chat. I felt it was very important, and continue to feel it was very important, that rats with these neural transmitters should only be able to do one thing at a time. So the chat takes up the whole screen. People hate this. I am not changing it. But through those early playtests, we would get feedback about the chat. And every time that would happen, I would feel some resistance and go, but that's core to the experience. You're supposed to be frustrated. You're supposed to have to make a choice about, am I chatting with my other rats or am I exploring? About 4 or 5 months ago, a review came out that was overwhelmingly positive, but it pointed to a specific thing about the chat that didn't work in a very specific way. And I looked at it and I went, well, that's not intentional. And I went back through the code, and what I found was that there was a function in the chat. The way I was handling the refresh meant that it was refreshing, completely rebuilding the chat window every frame. This is a terrible idea. And over 800 messages, it became really buggy, and it actually made the chat very difficult to use. That was not intentional. So when we're testing it, we're sending 1 or 2 messages back and forth. It's like 30 messages. But in an actual play session, sometimes it can be 12,000 chat messages. And suddenly, some of those frustrations that people had with the chat started to become contextualized in the form of the whole thing is not working, and you're identifying this one tentpole frustration as the frustration. As soon as I fixed that, people started identifying, oh, that was frustrating, but that was intentional, right?
So we were hitting all these walls pretty early on, and it honestly felt like maybe this project just couldn't work. But then we did something almost unheard of in the American theater arts, which is where our background is. We listened to people. I actually solicited player feedback through Google Forms that we sent them after the show and asked them to be very honest. Nathan created tools that allowed us to view the experience from someone else's perspective. He poured through database entries to check for timestamps and compare them against things that happened during the performance. Things like the chat issue, things that had seemed like they were just weird glitches, suddenly became revealed to be solvable problems, and that had actually just made someone have a bad experience.
And it turned out that most of the time when someone had a negative experience, it's because they were contextualizing something that happened in a way I wouldn't have expected. Because the nature of the piece is we basically give the audience prompts. There are always things that folks are empowered to and encouraged to make their own context for. One place we were intentionally playful is with the design of the rooms. There's all these rooms that you go into through the lab. And I felt that, again, it was important to the experience that each room, due to your neural transmitter, be manifested in a different art form or a different design idiom. This meant that there's never an opportunity for someone to get used to where you click to leave the room. We started getting, or we had been consistently getting feedback from people going, oh, I got stuck in this area. And I go, well, how are you stuck there? There's nothing that could stick you there. Just click the exit button. But it wasn't consistent. And so people's frustrations when they felt like I'm stuck in this room was because they were contextualizing something as the way out of that room that wasn't a picture of a door or the word exit, and they were getting frustrated. And they were right to.
So you've probably heard the term PEBCAC. There's a lot of cute terms, right, to blame problems on user error in every field. And the implication being, I made something perfect. How dare you not get it? It's just because you didn't listen right. And sometimes that truly is actually the case. I used to work in an escape room. It is a place where people frequently don't listen right, to the extent that they would cause physical damage to the space or the performers. One time someone kept insisting the tattoo on my arm was a clue to escape, when in reality it's just ink that I have on my body. But to figure out if this is the case or not, if the audience isn't listening or if it's something you did, back to the point of our talk, you have to practice empathy. You have to put yourself in the person's shoes. You have to see the experience as how they experienced it. And then after you've done that, only then can you know if the problem is actually between the keyboard and the chair.
And when we started listening to players and replaying things from their perspective, suddenly small complaints that didn't make sense started making so much sense. We started to see the places where what we were intending to communicate weren't being experienced in a way that actually shared the experience we wanted to communicate. The problem was definitely between the keyboard and chair, just not the player's keyboard and chair.
So yeah, oopsie daisy, we made some mistakes. We found the places where the intent had been to be playful with the UI was actually causing people to have no idea what the controls do and check out. We found places where people were consistently reporting in-world bugs as actual bugs mid-show. And because it's just the two of us running the whole thing, we don't have the capacity to solve a bug issue unless it's impacting everyone. We learned that if your goal is to intentionally subvert expectations in some places, then everything else has to just conform to expectations. Because fundamentally, to get someone to hear your story, they have to trust you. And if you're constantly pulling the rug out from under them without ever gaining that trust first, they'll never trust you. And to get them to trust you, you have to earn their trust by listening to them and imagining the experience from their perspective.
You have to listen to the experience of the players and take them at face value. If someone had a bad time, they had a bad time. They're not wrong. They're not lying about that. To empathize with your audience, you have to ask questions and be willing to hear answers that you don't want to hear. But in that process of doing that, you deepen that connection that you have with your audience. It stops being, I made a perfect thing and you will like it. It becomes a conversation. It becomes a connection. The questions you have to ask are, why did they have a bad time? And was there anything we could have done or would have wanted to do differently that could have made them have a good time?
The answer might be no. There are people who will be alienated by our work because maybe they identify more with the oppressive forces in our story. Maybe they just don't like this kind of thing, and that is okay.
So here are a list of reasons why a work of art may not resonate with someone. Number one, it's too similar to things they tend not to like.
It's too similar to things they like a lot, but different in their favorite parts.
It's too different from things they're comfortable with.
Maybe it has small inaccuracies about subjects they're extremely knowledgeable about.
Or it goes into extreme details about subjects they're not actually interested in.
Or it brings up painful or difficult memories.
They're just having a really bad day.
Or they'd rather be somewhere else at the time.
Or the cultural dialogue is about how great it is, and they merely thought it was just okay.
Or they're a bitter, dried-up husk of a human who only experiences art to punish themselves. In order to tell a good story, you have to listen to the people listening to you, but sometimes what you hear is that they wouldn't have liked any version of the story you were going to tell, and that's okay.
You have to give the people what they want. And this doesn't mean fan service. And it doesn't mean lowest common denominator. And I need you to understand that this picture of the Bee Gees up here is because at their best, they do neither. And you need to go listen to Odessa immediately after this presentation. It came out in 1969, and it sounds like What If the Decemberists Had Better Vocals and Worse Lyrics? You can and should be subversive and transgressive and push boundaries. You should release a Decemberists album in 1969. We're literally here because we made a hit interactive piece where you play as rats in a lab that's half ASCII art as a metaphor for the struggle of disability justice in America, which models consensus-based decision-making processes of anarchist facilitation as its core narrative structure, and apparently people liked it.
So yeah, being part of being empathetic to your audience is actively interrogating which boundaries you're pushing, what expectations you're subverting, and whether the communication you're trying to facilitate is being received as you intended.
The role of a good storyteller isn't to be the loudest voice in the room, it's to be the best listener in the room.
So in conclusion, don't alienate the people that are trying to be in community with you.
And if you do alienate the people who are trying to be in community with you, make sure you're doing so intentionally. Because if all you do is tell stories that alienate others, you can't be surprised when no one wants to hear your stories or trust you to take them on a journey. This sounds really obvious to say, but like everything else, we had to learn it the hard way. When you see your audience, your players, your readers, not as a source of revenue or fans or followers, but just as people who want to connect with you and just as badly as you want to connect with them, what you'll find is that more often than not, they will connect. And that connection is the whole reason we tell stories in the first place.
If it's not painfully obvious already, we do want this to be a conversation. So we've left the rest of our time to do just that. So if you have questions about the process or the tools or experiences you have that you want to share, we'll do that now. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, Allie.
I've actually been really curious for a while about your piece about the billionaires and the bunkers and climate change. And I'm really interested in how you approach potentially building empathy with characters who are like so far removed from you might normally empathize with, and kind of what was your approach to telling that story, what you wanted to say?
Yeah, that's
We should repeat the question for Discord.
Allie asked about our show and process you've already won, where you play as a billionaire, and how you get players to empathize by being a terrible person. The show started because that's the question we wanted to ask. One of my mentors, this man named Jeff Worth, he literally wrote the book on interactive acting. something that we struggled with, and he was always trying to work on when we were in class together, was how do you encourage people to want to take the moral low ground? Because even if someone's playing as a different version of themselves, it's very difficult to get them to make a choice that is morally low. And so we were like, okay, how do we do that? And we wanted to give people in this show the opportunity, and we actively encourage them to play as like the lowest, basest versions of themselves. Do you want to pick up here?
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that I feel is very important in terms of addressing climate change, all of our, you may be able to infer this, but we have certain political values that I'm sure we all share in this room, that we view climate change not through the lens of these being systems that are like unknowable and they're just like happening, but that they're the result of choices that individual specific people are making. Like climate change is happening because specific people with names and addresses have chosen to make climate change happen. And I felt very strongly that the only way to get people to see that was to make choices in those shoes and see that like, it's really easy to make a terrible choice that condemns thousands of people to die.
And we make it, we do it in a very cheeky way. It's very playful. And from the very beginning of onboarding, it's like kind of cutouts and jokes. So you're like coming in and you spin a wheel to get your net worth, which is in like the billions of dollars. And all the steps that the players take from the moment they start onboarding to become their billionaire character are designed to make it seem like really fun and playful, and like they get to choose their billionaire name and people do like silly, ridiculous names. And so we found that, and because people play anonymously without being on camera or microphone, they pretty quickly take on the characters that we endow them with. People become a rat very fast. As soon as they open that chat, they're like, squeak, 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 I'm a rat, what's your favorite cheese? As soon as they open they're a billionaire, they're like, hello, my fellow billionaires, how's your money today? And so we found that from the very beginning of onboarding, you have to set the expectation, and then we like to subvert it at the end and be like, wow, why did you want to play that way? Why did you do all the things we encouraged you to do? And here's why maybe you should think about it differently. Yeah, right there.
So yeah, that actually gets the question I wanted to ask. So how much of that would you say relates to kind of the general willingness of the audience to participate in the magic circle versus the actual representative form of whatever you're asking the audience to participate? I'm wondering about all these different experiences you've curated and created. I wonder if that kind of gives you some data points as to how people are receptive to it.
Yeah, there's a question about how people are receptive to joining the magic circle, data points, things that we might do to encourage that. You were about to.
Oh, that's just a really interesting question. And I think it's one that like has no one answer. I think it's one that we are constantly interrogating. Yeah. I think a lot of it is a very intentional use of form to say, like, use of starkness of color scheme to say, like, this is a space that is absent of context and that allows you to fill in context. We try to be as minimal as possible, both out of a sort of pragmatism of like, it's just the two of us, so we can only do so much, but also that we want people to fill in the gaps as much as humanly possible. I don't think that there is any one way to approach that. I think what we found is that what makes people feel comfortable stepping into that magic circle is a sense of safety, a sense of trust, and a sense that like, when I do so, if I'm the worst version of myself, it's okay. And if I'm the most chaotic version of myself in Lab Rats, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be that. And once they feel that, they'll go with you.
Yeah. I think also the benefit we have of having a live performer is it gives them, and in both Lab Rats and You Have Already Won, I play as a quite antagonistic character. And it's a very quick way to get people to form a community together, right, to have a common enemy. And I think also here, I have a background in immersive and interactive theater. Nathan's background in theater design, like we have these skill sets that we've been sort of bringing from all of our decades of experience in other fields, where we take a little bit from each one and put it together to create our own version. And there is a lot of experimentation and trial and error. Yeah.
Just related to that, I was curious. So I'm super into like playback theater, theater to the press, and these different forms. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about some of those other forms that you have a background in, and which things maybe you pulled from, and which things were harder to adapt to your specific version.
Yeah, they asked about playback theater, theater of the oppressed. I don't have experience in either of those. I'm familiar with them. I have, I know about them from a, philosophical background. My training, I trained with this company that was called in New York for a while called Playing with Reality, run by Jeff Worth. He also ran something called The Deep Dive, which was in Austin in 2012. And this is immersive and this is interactive theater where the audience and the performer co-create the story together. So the work we did was dramatic improv with a general idea for a story, maybe like a situation that someone was in, but there was nothing else planned. Like if it'd be like if the Truman Show happened, but Truman knew that he was in that everyone around him was actors. So this form of theater making was a group of highly trained interactors that had been training together for a long time as an ensemble. Someone would come up from the audience and they would become this character and we would build a story together. So that's where my training began. I've done a lot of immersive theater in New York. Some of it was very Sleep No More inspired, very dark and mysterious and red lights. Some of it ranged just to pop-up activations for a brand, for a launch of something. So yeah, there's a ton of different ways. And some of those stories can be really frustrating because you think you're gonna go into this space and be able to engage really deeply because great, I'm stepping into this world. Wow, it's beautiful. There's smoke around me and red velvet and it feels really rich. And then if you look a little closer, you see the paint chips and you maybe realize that there's actually no story that's been thought about. And they're the creators, and I've had this, the people who created it just were figuring well, once everyone's there in the room, you'll figure it out, right? You can improvise with them. And that can be really disappointing. Do you want to?
Sure, yeah. My background, I have a pretty wide-ranging background. I've done, I think like a lot of us who come to this work, I've done a lot of different things for a living. But one of the most consistent things that I did was as a theater designer for more traditional kind of regional theater work. And I think a lot of our work exists in reaction to that and feeling the sense of over-planning and under imagining what the audience might want to do. The sort of sit down, shut up, and be polite form of theater, I think, obviously that's where a lot of my training is, but that's also something that I think our work intentionally rejects.
And Nathan would come to see my immersive shows, and because he's a writer, he hated when an actor would come up and put him on the spot and be like, okay, now talk to me, tell me who you are. So that was also that was also a big part of sort of how we evolved this form. Was I wanted to create something where the level of interaction had layers, so that if you are showing up because you want to interact, you can. If you want to interact in terms of text, fantastic. If you want to interact in terms of just being embodied and moving around the space, also fantastic. If you want to interact in terms of just being passive and watching, fantastic. And if you want to interact in terms of opening every single book and seeing what's written there, also fantastic. All of those are levels of interaction that I have felt in other things that I've experienced or been involved in creating. There was a serious limitation around, and I wanted to find a form where we could give people the ability to interact to a depth that
theater often sets guardrails and says, okay, you can touch anything except that. Okay, so you can touch one thing.
And it didn't touch on this in the talk, but I think that extends about empathy, is like empathizing with how people may want to play and how they're showing up on maybe someone normally on a regular day loves to generate text, loves to become the center of the story, but they just had a really shitty time. Something else totally unrelated happened. And they're like, oh, great. Now I don't have to actually interact. I can decide to go and read the books in the library instead, and I don't have to waste my ticket. Yeah.
So as you were going through the slides of the different shows you've done, I saw this thread of kind of unexpected things happening from very scientific contexts. So that like the kinds of consequences that happen from unintended consequences of scientific process seem to be, in a lot of ways, very beneficial for things like improvisational theater, like unexpected, happy accidents, or potentially game-breaking bugs, or things you have to mitigate for your people experiencing that. I'm wondering how you're potentially threading inspiration from unintended scientific consequences versus unintended dramatic, not to separate art from
Yeah.
No, I don't think you should.
Versus the use of it and the outcome of it when it happens to you.
For the Discord, that was about the thread of scientific unexpected discoveries and improvisational unexpected discoveries, and where they may or may not intersect. But do you want to?
Sure, yeah. I think that is a very core fascination of ours. So gold star for the day. You picked up on the the connective tissue of basically all of our work. But I think, I'm a person who doesn't believe in like black and white stuff. Like, I think that everything has a cost benefit analysis, both in terms of scientific progress and in terms of artistic expression, that like you can create a work of art that you intend to exist in one way, and it can end up being really toxic. I think Fight Club is sort of the archetypal example of like, the intent is just not the cultural perception of that work. And I think the same is true of science, that like, the invention of dynamite was for helping mining, and then it became a weapon. Pretty much everything that is a weapon was actually originally invented to be something other than a weapon. So I don't think that like we do ourselves any benefit when we say that any scientific progress is good or bad, or any artistic expression is good or bad. And I'm really interested about the places in both contexts where it's like, I don't know what this is going to do, but it's not going to be boring. Like, I think that's the thing that the scientific method, classically practiced, is amazing for. And art at its best is when you have a question that you're like, truly don't know where this is headed. Let's go there together. And I find that really exciting in both cases. And I think they are the same, personally.
Probably have time for just one more question. It's back there. Yeah.
So I guess kind of adding to the magic circle question, I was kind of wondering if there's anything consistent about, I guess, both on sort of entry and exit for the audience, like the like meta signaling that you're doing, where if you want somebody to be able to like export the experience that they had, in your setting to say things about disability or other things in the real world, like both for like on entry, like having some setting the scene for their expectations and motive engagement and whatever, and like maybe bracketing off opportunities to like be reflexive or
Yeah.
on other things.
Great question about the offboarding process as well as the onboarding process, and how we make room for conversation or thought about the themes that were present. That's
a very big question.
Well, that was actually something that's been really hard, and Lab Rats did not have like a proper good ending that we felt was really satisfying until very recently, actually. But we have a Discord where we invite people to join after the show, and they do, because it's turned into this space similar to a bar after the show where a lot of people do come and want to just like continue their ratty conversations. Yeah.
I think, the thing that is a challenge is that offboarding process where, like, on the one hand, you want to give people a sense of agency in the story. On the other hand, you want to give them a sense that the story has like been planned and thought about, and that like you cared enough to give them a good ending. And on the other hand, you want to also like leave them with some poignant thoughts or whatever. And I would actually say, like, I don't really think you need to do the last one. Like, I think like, people make their own metaphors and are really good at that. And if you offboard them in a way that tells them what they're supposed to have felt or supposed to have thought, then they actually slide off the story, because people remember an emotional experience a lot more than they remember like the point of the story. And one of the things that we found in those early playtests of Lab Rats, where we would like really aggressively be like, here's what the story is about, here's what this is, and people would still not get it. And so I have come to feel, and maybe I'm wrong about this, I don't know, life is long, there's a lot of opportunity to evolve my thinking on this, but at this point, I don't think that there is value in telling someone what your authorial intent was. You can say it and they can discover it. You can create opportunities for them to ask you. But I think people are going to make their own assumptions no matter whether you tell them what you meant or not. So you might as well spare them the time of having to listen to you lecture them and just try and give them an emotional conclusion and let the intellectual conclusion happen whenever it happens, months later, weeks later, whatever.
That's all of our time. So thank you. Thank you all. Had great questions.
Ooh, fantastic questions.
Yeah. Take a sticker if you want to keep up with us. We have cards, or, come find us. We look like this.
Yeah.